this chart, there were some that there were no responses. I omitted those because that would have been a second consequence or follow-up. So the next few slides, well, I'll kind of stop there. Any questions, thoughts about demographics, attendances, behavior type stuff? Okay, the next few slides focus on academics and performances on our standardized assessments, beginning with reading and literacy. We take the FAST assessments. The first slide here is the FAST assessments that we give 3 times a year, and the thing that we're really looking for here is continued improved percentage numbers from fall to spring, obviously, as we continue to teach and instruct and provide instruction and trying to meet objectives, looking for those numbers to increase. And so do feel good about the way that those are going. Not perfect by any means, but feel good in the direction, the trend that they're headed. The next one would...
Can I add one to that
Sure,
last one?
absolutely.
I always, too, even as an educator, go, well, what is 54% of fifth grade? Is that really good or poor? So I think it's helpful when he adds, like, just to compare to the state and Northwest State. It kind of gives you a frame of reference, because even me being in it go, how does that compare? Is that really exceptional, really poor, right where we're at? So yeah, I think that's a good thing to compare to as well.
So those bottom 3 lines are the comparison lines there. Thank you. The next one would be our Iowa statewide assessments of student proficiency in literacy. And again, these are not tracked or compared statewide yet. I believe we get that in the fall. Looking pretty good. We're looking to make sure that those, especially here, that these kind of level off, to see if the implementation of our new reading curriculum over the last couple of years, I heard a lot that our teachers are becoming more familiar and more comfortable in that and implementing that with more fidelity and how it's intended to be. And so looking for those to kind of continue to rise and to level off there. So the next one would be similar scores, but our math proficiency scores. Again, looking for growth, percentage growth from fall to spring. Good growth there, good learning objectives being met there. This is kind of the first time that this chart has been included in this report. I pulled this from the statewide database. It's called Panorama. And so they're the one that sets the proficiency percentage at the state level. And so our iReady is not directly, there's not a direct correlation in terms of grade level. The iReady is more of a grade level test. And so it's interesting to see how the state deems those as proficient versus the grade level. So if you go to the next chart, this is that grade level that I was talking about. Again, the 3 assessment periods from fall to winter to spring, and then 3 columns which within each one of those assessment periods. The green one would be all the students that are on the grade level that they tested at. The yellow one would be 1 grade level or less below, and then the reddish pink one, fuchsia, whatever color you'd like to call that, would be 2 or more grade levels below. And so focusing on one color between the 3 different assessments and seeing the green grow and the yellow and the red kind of shrink. And so I feel like we've met those goals kind of as we go through, if you look at each of those 6 grades. So, and then the next one is the ISASP, statewide assessments again. Very pleased with that, and we will continue to compare ourselves once again with the Northwest AEA and the state when we are able to. And then also our science results. So the 5th grade science overall proficiency was a little bit lower, but that sometimes changes between students taking the test and just a lot of different variables that go in there. So continue to look into that and how we can continue to grow and build on strengths. The next couple of slides are, absences for staff, both teachers and support staff. You can kind of see those. It was interesting to me to see the number of jury leave staff. I felt like we were dealing with that a lot this year, but seeing that was only a day and a half between certified and classified staff kind of surprised me. So I feel like we were making contingency plans for that a lot, but didn't have to use it a lot, so that was good. And then the percentages there. I will say we had 3 staff members at the preschool through 6th grade level who were out on some type of maternity leave with their families. So huge congratulations to them. We did have a few also with some major surgeries and some of those type of major illnesses that we continue to support as best we can. So, and then the successes, like I maybe mentioned here just a little bit, the continued implementation of our CKLA and ELA Amplify curriculums, hearing good things about that and just building that comfort level in there. Our MTSS process I would classify as a success. I know there were some growing pains, but we learned a lot through that and we'll continue to try and be better there. The mentoring program and the job that Katie Schroeder and this past year Lindsay Helmers, but moving forward Barb Williamson, continue to do, that's been a benefit for us in terms of keeping staff in front of students and having them provide that instruction as much as possible. And then we'll always continue to place students first and meet the needs of the students as best we can. Continue working to build our familiarity. The last slide is what can we look forward to in 24-25. Build our familiarity. We're really going to dive a little bit more deeply into our math curriculum. Next year is a math curriculum review year for purchase. Next year an implementation for 25-26. So really digging into what the state released some new mathematical standards and how can we align our curriculum up with that and kind of getting into that. Continuing to use data and refining our database decision making and our processes. And then again, placing students first and foremost. Kind of a lot of information. I went through it kind of quickly, but a lot of good stuff, a lot of areas that we can continue to grow and improve.
Thank you, Mr. Stale. Do you guys have any questions, anything brought up or that you've seen that you have from the elementary through sixth
What
grade?
are the difference in these tests again, like the FAST versus like the iReady?
Yep, good question. The FAST is our secondary reading assessment that we report to the state. It's done 3 times a year. The iReady is basically our math version of that. So we're required to report a secondary assessment to the state, and so we use FastBridge Literacy. It's called the A reading test, and then iReady uses a diagnostic test. The iReady is a leveling test, and so that's what we use to report as our secondary assessment to the state to kind of, so the state, they use it for healthy indicators, how well each school building is doing and some of those kind of things.
And the state requires a K through
8, I believe it's K8, right? Does that sound right? I think
I thought it was
K6.
I think the secondary K6. You
Okay.
can elect to 7 and 8, if I remember right.
Okay. That sounds right.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's K6.
you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
you're
secondary
required
assessment.
to.
Yep.
Yep.
Plus,
Through
now
sixth
a
grade.
couple of these grades are a little lower in this FAST, but yeah,
Mhm.
these iReady ones are kind of on track.
Yep. Yeah, and so the FAST is the literacy. And we did find that we kind of had a bubble of kids, and we're not quite sure if it's lingering effects from COVID, which kind of seems weird, you know, if you're looking at like the first grade is, the spring assessments were 54% proficient,
Wow.
first grade. So they were not in school in COVID, but did some of that affect the social and some of those kind of things, you know what I mean? And so, is that affecting classroom instruction? So all good questions and things that need to be looked at and questions that need to be asked.
Why do you think some of them decline from fall to spring? You would think that.
You would hope that that would go up. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My word for it is the spring slump. So these are given post-ISAST. It's their 3rd time going through the same assessment within the same school year, and it's given in May.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw.
A couple
saw
weeks
that.
out from the end of the year.
We saw that at the 7th and 8th grade level as well with the fast bridge, just something I noticed looking at things. We have good growth from fall to winter, and then we plateau or drop in some cases.
Is there a time frame you're required to do it? Would it be beneficial for the students to do it sooner in the spring?
Those are questions we've asked. So the big one we were kind of working through right now is our fall assessment. We felt like we gave that almost too early. The summer slide was still in full effect. We didn't really get the instruction, get the kids back into the school routine before we gave that to them. So we saw a high percentage qualify for our title reading program early in the fall, and then not as many in the winter. And so we're looking at what's the best time to give these for the most success. We do have windows of time that we need to administer them in, given by the state. Those have just been published here over the last couple of months for next year. And so our testing team, which is comprised of our title teachers, Kristen Byers, Paula Beltman, and then Barb Williamson, and Lindsay Helmers has been on that team, but now with her retirement. So the testing team has kind of been whittled down a little bit too, but they do a really good job of collaborating with the classroom teachers of, okay, what works best, and is this a good time? And so those are some of the things that we're kind of trying to work through of what is that best time. So,
There is a window.
There
You
absolutely
can't
is
just
a
say,
window.
oh, we're gonna go wait till
Yeah.
end of year in February, because that doesn't fit in the window.
And then trying to, like Mr. Hertz was saying, okay, so we have to give Iowa assessments, ISASPs, I guess, and then also the FAST assessments. And in the spring, it's kind of the, yeah.
The testing
Test,
season gets
test,
long.
test, yeah,
For a lot of these students, there's also the ALPA
yep,
that they take in the spring as well. That's
which is the,
second language,
Yeah.
English as a second language students. So I think some of that is test fatigue. That's my opinion. I don't think data to back that up, but that's my take.
I noticed the same thing too. And so we'll kind of go through that next fall and say, okay, why do you think this was? And because we didn't see that as much last year, and that's really the most data that I have to go off of, you know what I mean? And so, it's a valid question. Thanks for bringing it up. Sorry, I don't have a direct answer for you right now, but
What test was this one?
this was the ISASP, or, I'm sorry, this is iReady,
iReady.
yeah.
Whether it's, the biggest thing, yeah, you don't want that, but when you're looking across, like when I'm looking at this, look at the bottom of 6th line, you want to see in that green box when you're going across in grade 6, that means that at each testing time, a higher percentage are
Yep,
proficient. And then that's what we were getting at, that those yellow boxes, you know, like it went 48 to 50%, ideally not up, but then it went down to 28, right?
Yeah.
And then the red is the 2 grades or more behind. You want those going down as well throughout the year.
but I think too, you look at those in conjunction, right? So if we're just taking that 6th grade, if you look at the fall, the yellow is 48%, the red is 27%. And then in the winter, the yellow went to 50% and the red went to 15%. So yes, the yellow went up, but that's because we took some from 2 or more grade levels down and brought them up. It's that growth perspective. And so, yeah, you want to look column to column, and the yellow and the red, you want to go down and the green to go up. But sometimes they got to, not sometimes, they got to go from red to yellow. So that kind of makes that yellow column increase, even though we really don't want it to. But they kind of got to go through that cycle, that process there. So.
Any more questions, Mr. Dusey? Okay. Mr. Hertz?
So my end of the year report is in there, and staff attendance, I'll go over some summaries, like Mr. DeZayo did as well. I am a little jealous of Kent's report. It is much more pleasing to the eye than mine is. Next year I'll have to follow suit and pick up a few tricks from Kent. So I didn't include demographic data, and I guess I would throw that out. If there are pieces of information that aren't included, that you want included, please think about that and share that with us.
Yeah.
So we can include those on next year's reports, or gather those throughout the year if that's something that we need to do. first time doing it, just not something that I thought of, but it is a good thing that probably you would be interested in knowing, so I'll include that next year. Starting with attendance, down a little bit overall, 712, or at the high school, sorry, came in right at 94.84%. In my mind, I'd like to see us return to above 95%. That's kind of that benchmark that we set before COVID. We did, return close. We've actually ticked down a little bit from year to year. And I'll go over some of the things that we're doing to try to combat that. The table below just kind of shows you breakdown. Again, sorry, it's small, but it includes a lot of information. Number of days, male, female, grade level, and then just how many excused, unexcused, those types of things. On page 3, I've broken some of the more necessary data down on a table and continue to build off of what Stan had. For the 2024 high school, we had 17 students hit that 20 absence mark. And again, this includes excused and unexcused. And unfortunately, in our system, we can't differentiate between if they're excused to go to a basketball game with the basketball team, or if they're excused because they're ill. Those all just are excused, and then they get tallied. So we do have a few students who are highly involved and miss for a lot of school events. So potentially they could have ended up in this ballpark if they were in state cross country and state vocal jazz and FFA. All of those groups miss several days throughout the school year. Just something that JMC doesn't allow us to differentiate, and so that does, I think, contribute to some of these numbers. But the majority of these students would be students we have concerns about missing a great deal of school. One, positive, we didn't have any hit that 40 absent mark, which I think is good. I think our interventions helped to keep those students from breaking into that, so happy about that. 17 out of 193 students at the end of the year were chronically absent, and that, I believe, was down a little bit year to year. So our total absence number went down a little bit, but our number of students who were chronically absent improved, is maybe another way to say that. It's a little more clear. And we're seeing absences for all kinds of reasons, mental health, illness, and I think in general, just kind of a lack of engagement. A lot of times students will come to school despite maybe not feeling their best because they have an activity they're excited about or something going on that evening that they want to participate in. But as students become less involved, there's less of those incentives that keep students. So just doing a lot of thinking about how we can get students involved again in activities so they have that incentive to come to school. Things we're doing to address it, we do send letters at 5 days absence, and at 10 days, we did receive a little bit of pushback again because we can't differentiate. We had students who missed for different school-related activities get a letter. The letter just states, your students have 5 absences. We would like your student to come to school, those types of things. So we're gonna look at maybe rewording the 5-day letter to maybe account for some of that, because I can understand a parent gets a letter and their kid is only missed for volleyball matches and if they trip.
Bring to JMC, so he would like another.
Yeah.
Down here, or...
Yep. And Twyla, I believe, did reach out and ask the question of why, and we didn't. It wasn't something that they were looking into at the time. But when we got that feedback from parents, we did follow up with JMC. Basically, we were told at this point they just have excused and unexcused.
I would say that's the big 2 differentiators: excused or unexcused.
So, not perfect, but we stuck with it because we felt the letters are informational. It's good for parents to know at least where their kids are at, attendance-wise, whether they're for school events or for illness or any other reason.
So I've got a quick question for you.
Yep.
When you talked about the 17 out of 193 students
Yep.
were chronic absenteeism, was that the same? Are those the same numbers that you're pulling from like excused and unexcused, or are those kind of looking a little bit deeper into,
Nope, that's
just straight on that?
we had
Okay.
17 kids who hit that 20 absence mark, and then 4 of that 17 continued on and ended up having 30 absences.
Okay,
So we had 17 total that we lump into that chronically absent. The vast majority of them are kids who are absent for, illness, mental health, different things like that, so. Yeah, so some things we're doing to address it. The letters, we did have parent meetings with the student and parents, myself and Amy Elser, our at-risk coordinator, sat down, talked with parents, students about how we can help them attend school, what barriers there are, trying to just problem solve and help. We did see some success with that. We did have, as you can see, 4 students hit that 30 mark, so it didn't work in all cases. And once we got past that meeting, our next intervention was an attendance plan, which depending on the student could be things like checking in with the nurse before we would send them home for illness, or requiring that they come to school to be evaluated by our nurse before they are excused. Like parents and students struggling with, well, they say they're sick, we're not sure. Okay, have them come to school, our nurse will evaluate them, and then we'll make the decision from there. So just trying some different interventions like that to, one, help parents not have to make that tough decision, and make sure that if a student is sick, that, yep, they've seen our nurse, and yep, they should stay home. So. The final step, which we did get to with 2 students, is mediation with our county attorney, Nolan McGowan. And after we got to that point, we did see no additional absences from those 2 students. So that, it's tough that we have to get to that point, but it was effective for those 2 students to sit down with the county attorney and understand that they are legally required to attend school, and that's what they need to do. math ISAS data, not quite as encouraging as the literacy, but I do think year to year, we'll see that it's improved. So just overall happy with how we did ISAS wise, and then science is there for grades 8 and 10. So that test is only taken 5th grade, 8th grade, and 10th grade. Just a summary of the year. I thought overall great year. Was very happy with our students. I think we have a lot of really well-behaved students who work really hard, who care a lot about their school and their friends and doing well in academics and extracurriculars. So just really encouraged by all of that. Number of referrals I think were up, but I think some of that is due to just in general documentation and record keeping. I don't know that we had an explosion of bad behaviors. It certainly didn't feel that way to me. Just different ways we're documenting. So, definitely do want to double down on our success time and try to incorporate more of that community building to hopefully improve some of that attendance data, and hopefully if students are here, better attendance data, then better pass-fail data as well. It's kind of what my thought process is. And then again, there's always going to be that strong connection between being here and having academic success. So if we can improve those attendance numbers, I think we'll see better academic success too. Just other concerns or discussion points. Staff-wise, all positions filled 5 through 12. We did hire and got an acceptance from a high school counselor, so excited about that. But that will be a concern, I think, going forward. It's just always hard to find staff, especially in certain areas. Our enrollment, it looks like our trends continue to go down. And I think that's maybe a trend across the state. One thing we're competing with, I think, especially at the high school, online schooling. Since COVID, I think that's pretty attractive to kids. Stay home, attend an online school, and those online schools are looking for students. So I think it's something that we'll combat. We're going through lots of changes. Middle school dropping from 3 sections down to 2. High school, we're kind of mid-transition. Some subject areas are at that point, others are not. In the next 3 years, we'll kind of see that transition, and just really appreciate staff's flexibility and willingness to take on new assignments or roles or step up and help out in what ways they can. And then for myself, some things I want to work on for next year. Communication, just more advanced notice. Having been through it for a year now, I kind of know what things are coming, what things aren't. Trying to include more stakeholders in decision making. Being more visible, hopefully now with the dean of students in the middle school, I can be more visible in classrooms, hallways, and have more positive interactions with students. That's another goal. And then one thing specifically picked up from the training Kent and I went to at the AEA, specific praise and thank yous for staff. I'm going to try to write letters or notes next year myself for them. So. And then highlights, I won't go through all those just for the sake of time, but lots of things to be very proud of and happy about. Lots of academic success, lots of state qualifiers and really great state performances, musically, athletically. We have a lot of fun events this year, class competitions, homecoming, May Aqua Day for the 9-12. They got out and played some water sports, I guess you could call them, on the last day of school. So just a lot of really good things from the year, and it was a great first year for me. So thankful to be here. Any questions?
When is that success? You alluded to the community building during success time. What time of day is that? Is that at the end of the day or middle or?
So we changed how we structured lunch, going to a 2 lunch shift, A lunch and B lunch, and then opposite of that, students will have success. So
For next year.
For next
For
year.
next year.
Yep.
So
for the
then are
students
they
who-
always with the same staff member, or how, do they
Yeah,
have
so they'll-
specific things to cover during that time, or what?
Yep, so in the high school, focusing on a few different areas, we're doing a drop everything and read, and so that's one of the days. An SEL focus day, a community building focus day, and then a college and career readiness focus day, and then an intervention day. So it's 30 minutes each day, and we're kind of working on building the curriculum for that. We've used Jordan Menning to help us with the work-based learning, school to career, college and career readiness piece. Katie and I and Jillian a little bit before she left, we're working on the SEL portion of it. We're gonna pull some of the things from our AEA training. So working on building those curriculums and what we're gonna do during that time, but excited about it. Yeah. That'll be the structure 5 through 12.
Okay,
The 2 lunch shifts, opposite of where the students have lunch, they have success. And they will be assigned to a teacher, and they'll have that teacher for the year. Kind of a homeroom is maybe another way to think of it.
anybody else have any questions for Mr. Hertz? Okay, thank you for that. Thank you both for your reports. We'll move on to Mr. DeZayo.
Yeah, great stuff. Thank you both for putting that together. I know the time that it takes, so, and I would blame your lack of pizzazz on that based on your predecessor not having that, so. I would talk to you on that, but, with the goal, the one thing I wanted to point out that Mr. Hertz talked about with his PD, saying that the thing, SAI, that's school, if you don't know, School Administrators of Iowa, and then as part of that, our job, we have memberships to that, but that's one of the things they provide to support. So Casey had a mentor, Mr. Engelman from Central Lyon, and then I had a mentor as well, Gary McEldowney from Sioux Center, and that's probably as valuable as anything. So we appreciate the board support in doing that. And many times, a lot of the ideas that we're working on, we talk about changing, probably started with a conversation with another administrator. The one that I know of, I was going to think as an example that these guys talked about, but the requirement at the high school level, in order to take the college credits, that you have to be proficient on your ISAPs. That wasn't just a sitting here, a brainchild. There's other schools that are doing that, and gave that as an example. So just something like that. So thanks for presenting that, but I wanted to add to that. So trying to summarize here in the last month and what's been going on with the 3 goals we've been talking about, and these guys have actually been hitting on a lot of them in their work here, but we spent time on our curriculum cycle and making preparations for that for next year, because math will be on the curriculum review cycle. So just talking about that, and then spend a fair amount of time, which we'll talk about here later, though, the sharing agreement on our work-based learning coordinator and getting that approved tonight. That I think I've kept you up on as best I can. That, as a reminder, we shared with Central Line, Boyd and Hall, and the AEA, and then using that to support the CAPS program, but a lot of other ways, and Mr. Hertz gave an example of that. In terms of goal 2, the retention, engagement, and where we're at. When I wrote this, it was before we had officially, and since you guys had presented that before we officially had a high school counselor, so it said 2 openings, there's really 1. That's why I said trying to fill the high school counseling position, and hopefully that is. And it was after I wrote this, and then the elementary SPED position is really what we're looking for from a teaching standpoint, and still working on that with some behind the scenes phone calls and things like that. A lot of plans and things have gone in preparation for next year, and that hasn't stopped. That'll just continue. Arrangements for the middle school dean, and we'll talk about approving that here, or you did approve that with the consent agenda, but we'll continue to work on looking at that, and just getting started on some of those events that we're going to have next fall when we return for PD, and some other things lined up. By no means set, but just things that we're working on. And then for goal 3, continuing to have those discussions on, these guys both alluded to that, but just staffing decisions and what that'll look like and the changes that we could have in the coming years moving forward. Had a fair number of meetings with SiteLogic, and I'll talk about one of those at the end, because we're going to approve the a payment schedule with them that we're talking about, and I'll answer some more questions with that. And then you can read the rest. I won't read through that all. So the one thing I did want to highlight, we're still working through, and Kendra and I have a Google Meet on this tomorrow, but we did get approval for that school safety grant, which I think I started talking about in July or August already. And so finally got the go-ahead and some of the things that will help us purchase and afford. Our goal is, we have some school safety radios that were free, but we still have to pay for, so we'll pay for that out of that. We're looking at upgrading our security cameras in the district in all 3 buildings. This would help pay for that. Swipes, upgrading our swipe system on the doors, like the security doors, right? Swipes with that, some signage, and then anything that's left over in each building after we pay for those items over the next how many months, half year, then we would use to help apply towards the facilities improvement project with the entrances. Those fall under the guidelines of the school safety grant, so we would help, and then that could reduce some of those costs too. So that's all I have. Any questions on that?
Is that a one-time grant, or is that
That is-
something that could be renewed?
That is a one-time grant.
Okay.
Some schools have worked through and got it done and used the money, and some are just in the application phase now. So I would say we're, yeah, kind of in the middle of where others that I've talked to are at.
Any questions for Mr. DeSalle? We'll continue on with committees.
Yeah, none have met in the last month, so no updates there.
Recognition of excellence.
Did I get you to read that one?
Sure.
Mr. Lee?
Absolutely. Journals of the week for the month of May. On May 3, the elementary is Max Elser, the middle school is Lexi Wedge, high school is Jonathan Olvera Don, and staff was Kara Snyder. On May 10, the elementary was Jennifer Ramos Martinez, middle school is Chloe Sheffield, and high school is Katie Kruger, staff was Beth Molitor. May 17, elementary was Blake Schmidt, middle school is Sergio Navarro Manzan, high school is King Julius, staff was Soyeon Lee. And congratulations to the graduating class of 2024.
Thank you for that. We'll move on to our discussion items. We have our 2-minute board policy.
So a lot of different things that I could have done. I always try to do it something that I've been working on or that's been relevant. But one of the things that came up that I think with all the discussions on the AEA and the changes and some of the other things, as someone told me, that took a lot of the air out of the room this year legislatively in the education world. And so there were other things that were important and that were discussed, ended up getting passed, or maybe we wanted passed and didn't get passed, but didn't get the coverage or the lip service because of the whole AEA conversation. Not that that wasn't valuable, I just mean there's a lot of time spent on it. And so one of these was that I've been looking into and getting some guidance on here, but to make you guys aware is Senate File 2435. And I linked to the bill so that you can see that, but this is the state of Iowa's legislative page, and it shows that this is passed. The actual bill isn't on here yet, but if I do this, let's see, I'm gonna find the location here. But somewhere as I get here, what they have done is they have gone back similar to the, and I'm not gonna find it because I'm trying to multitask, look and talk at the same time here, but they have gone back to the system where there's open enrollment deadlines.
Page 28.
Thank you. Paragraph A. Paragraph A right there, right?
Yeah, by March.
Uh,
My page is different than yours. It says 28.
28.
Section 23.
There we go, right there. Yep, I was just on the wrong one. Going back to the system, and I can't remember what year they repealed this, that there weren't open enrollment deadlines. I want to say like about 4 or 5 years ago, somewhere there. I don't have the exact year off the top of my head, but basically now, come July 1, this goes back into effect. What used to be for years and years is you have to have your enrollment papers in by March 1 to open enroll to another district for the following school year. Kind of the old traditional system. That deadline is earlier or later, whichever word you want to use for kindergarten, since they're entering it. I think they technically, even if your school year starts on August 23, they have till September 1 to do that, but that's for kindergarten only. And so that goes sort of back to the system that it was before. I have reached out to a few places to see if there'll be guidance sent out or they'll update the online forms. And I've gotten about that much response from the state on that, even though that's in place. They haven't told us when they'll update the forms and guidance on that, but that is something that is enacted July 1. So I just kind of wanted to stay and make aware of that, since that's been a hot button discussion since the middle of May and the end of the school year here. And I mean hot button in the state and how that's handled. So questions on that or what that looks like.
So essentially July 1st, then, someone would have to file paperwork for this upcoming school year.
Before then. Yeah,
before.
if they had not done so, and wanted to do that, that would have to be dated, and our understanding is dated in by June 30. July 1 is when the new requirements comes into place. There are exceptions, and a board could vote to grant an exception and not have someone apply it, but my recommendation is that we follow through and use that deadline.
Mhm.
Okay. Move on to ISE training.
Hopefully you had a chance to look through where we had left it at last month. Look through to see if any of these, I think it was this link, I had included one that you could watch as a webinar to get your own hour of credit additionally if you wanted to. But this page was a listing of on the bottom, the different workshop topics, and see if what your 2 top ones were, and then we were going to use that. I had reached out to Luann here, and so as of last week, Wednesday, and she emailed me on Friday, and she said these are the dates that are still available. So in the fall, not only do we need the topic, that's probably less concerning right now. We could arrange that later, ideally tonight, but we could arrange that later. But these are the dates Luann would be able to come for training. So we have August 29, and then September 3, 4, 5, 10, 11, 16, 17, 18, 19, 23, 24, 25. I have honestly not compared them to the school calendar or anything because I wanted you guys to see the dates and everything like that. So I have not done that yet, because I did have about probably when I originally started corresponding with her 5 more dates that got pulled due to other commitments or schools lining up a training with her. So I'm not saying if we don't answer this tonight, tomorrow to be gone. That's not what I'm saying, but because I've been probably talking with her the last 2 weeks, but I'm just saying the dates do get taken. Because she had more August dates, and those are since all gone. So maybe I thought we could start with that, or any of those dates. And we would do this similar to last year when she came. I think we started at either 5:30 or 6. I think we did both for 2 different trainings, just depended on the night. But do any of those look as an option or not going to work?
Trying to think of what's that we've done so far.
Wednesdays work better for me.
Wednesdays, and that's good to know. So like the
What about it?
4th, I'm just looking here. So like the 4th, 11th, 18th, and 25th are all Wednesdays. Oops, I'm on the wrong tab here. And she has those all listed. How does Wednesdays look for everyone else? That'd be a better day, is that what you said? Yeah. The 4th is right after, what's that, I'm sorry?
There should be no activities on that.
Right, and there would be less that way. The 4th is, I'm not saying that we couldn't do that. I didn't put it on here. No homecomings later on, never mind. The 20th, yep. So the 4th is right after Labor Day. That doesn't mean we can't do that. I'm just pointing that out.
Casey Hurt's birthday's on the 6th, eh?
Sorry. That's basically-
Glad that's out there.
preference, I mean, I can maybe ask her like for the 4th or the 11th. I'm just throwing those out there to see if that works for you guys, in case one's taken. And then the backups could be the end of the month. I'm not hearing any no's, so I'm assuming that works. Okay. I will contact Luann about that.
See if you can do the 11th, so.
Yeah.
Okay. 11th first, then the 4th, or do we want to go 11th and then the 18th?
Yeah, I'd say that.
11th and the 18th? Okay. All right, can do that. Did you get a chance to look through some of these workshop topics? And some of these are ideas too, and then she can tailor things. You know, we had talked about a little bit that hadn't been done in a while, just developing some potentially strategic or long-term goals. That doesn't mean that's what it has to be on, but that was kind of what we framed it. But we could go a different direction. Were there any that stood out to you guys from this list?
I noted creating a culture of excellence and innovation, and then team vision and goal setting.
You said team, vision, and goals, is that, yep, I got you, yep. Okay. Any others? And if you have those same ones, say it, that's great, I'll mark it down that we have several vote for it, or pick that.
What was you two?
Kristen said, creating a culture of excellence and innovation, and then the team vision and goal setting.
I would go with the culture of excellence and innovation, and I'd go with the mission, vision, and
Okay.
I like that. Creating the culture. The only other one I was looking at was maybe school boards and student achievement, but I could go with vision and goal setting too. We haven't done that one, but it was a really good training too.
Okay. Jamie?
I'm fine with whatever.
Well, we have three, let me ask this, I've already had three that listed the creating a culture
Sure, I'll
of
do that one.
excellence. I'm gonna slaughter the name now. What is it?
School boards are all creating a culture of excellence and
And
innovation.
innovation, thank you, and innovation. So maybe I'll start
That's the
discussing that one with Luann.
Mhm.
And then we'll do that on ideally the 11th, if that's already taken when I get back to her tomorrow, the 18th. Okay. Thank you, that's what we needed.
Okay, moving on to new business. Consider approval of the 24-25 student handbook.
So I have some of our staff and district handbooks at the end. I gave both guys kind of a direction on this, that when they were making changes, you know, to kind of highlight them, but rather than put, you know, change the word a to the and all the clerical issues, maybe highlight or discuss some of the more important and significant, you know, updating one to match the wording on a policy or a name change. Well, that's important and listed there, didn't need this discussion. So that's kind of what I asked them to do to make this a little bit more user-friendly and readable. So maybe, Kim, there weren't changes to that early childhood one that's there. Do you want to discuss the elementary, or how have you
Yep.
guys planned it?
Yep, so the early childhood parent handbook is for our preschool staff, and we go through in our annual desk audit to meet the Iowa Quality Preschool Program standards. We go through that in the desk audit every year, and that's submitted, and so, I guess, asking for approval here so that the board is aware and, knows, but there are absolutely no changes in that handbook. In the elementary handbook, I have some language. I did strike through for the language that we were going to eliminate, and then highlighted for language that we were going to change, updated names and links and some of those kind of things totaling 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, about 9 different things on the different pages, and I think you could see those from the highlights and the strike throughs. But the biggest change would be on page 17 with the visitors section. We've had some issues with people bringing in fast food and jealousy and that kind of stuff, and so we're asking that if we invite visitors to come in to have lunch, but bring it in a tactful lunch, a school appropriate lunch, and something that's not going to create a bunch of hard feelings and jealousy and some of those kind of things. So that's the impetus behind that change. We do want people to come in, but be cognizant of what that looks like with a room full of kindergarten through fourth graders when you're bringing in.
Our show last year 3 times, I believe, due to late drops. So, and that was communicated with students that if they were not interested in taking band next year, they needed to drop by May 23rd. And so we did have a few students, but I haven't heard anything since we put that in. So to be aware of. Page 10, the ISAS requirement for dual enrollment classes, the high school and college class requirement. Got some of that language from other school districts, like Stan mentioned, that have implemented this, basically just stating you have to be proficient on all of the previous year ISAS tests in order to enroll and take college level classes. There are some exceptions which are listed on here. CTE, the state protects those from basically all requirements. So if a student wants to take a CTE strand college class, they can, even if they are not proficient. I think just part of the Iowa Works, trying to get more students in those trade fields, which I think is a good policy. So we'll also follow that. Page 12 and 13, just the pass-fail, found that some students were intentionally failing courses to get into credit recovery. And so now we've just changed that a little bit, that students have to take a class in person 2 full years basically before they can take it in credit recovery. We previously weren't able to do that because credit recovery was only offered during the school year. We're now offering it in the summer. So if a student does fail freshman English both semesters, and then again as a sophomore they fail freshman English both semesters, they would make that up in the summer to get them back on track. So students won't fall further behind because of this with the addition of the summer school, but it's also the best place for them to learn that information is in the classroom. That's our belief, so that's why we're doing it. Pages 14, 15, just some course updates. Some things have changed. We've added some different things. 16, page 16, community service hours submitted by May 1st. Our latest submission was maybe May 21st this year, which is cutting it pretty close because we printed the
Programs.
thank you, maybe a day or two later. So just wanting them in by May 1st so we don't have students cutting it so close like they did this year. Hoods and hats removed at the bell. Former policy was written as soon as they enter the building. Students coming in from the cold with stocking caps on, they leave them on for a few minutes. We don't allow them to go to their locker. So they're not in the hallway, so they're in the commons, so they can't really put any hat, head covering, that kind of stuff away, because they don't have access to their lockers. So just at the first bell, we're asking students to remove hoods and hats. Yep. Added an decoy phone policy into our cell phone policy. We had students that were bringing and checking in fake phones to avoid having to follow cell phone policy. At one point we had a student with 5 fake phones. So we were adding that in, just so students know kind of the consequences of that are pretty steep because we don't have time to chase fake phones. Robotics club information was added on there. And a few board meetings ago on page 33, I presented to the board just some changes to the eligibility policy, went over what I was thinking with you. And so that is the eligibility matrix, just trying to hopefully simplify for everybody what events, extracurricular, co-curricular, are affected by what policies. So our local policy is at the midterm, we'll run grades. If a student is failing, they become ineligible. They remain ineligible until they complete a form saying that they are passing all their classes. Every 2 weeks after the first midterm, we'll run that through the semester. That's our local policy, which was rewritten, and that's underneath. And then the state policy is that no pass, no play, or good scholarship rule. The state did change that from 30 days down to 20 days, but those are the events, co-curricular and extracurricular, that are impacted by the state policy. Just thought the matrix, the table, made it a little easier, hopefully for people to wrap their minds around it. And then our good conduct would be, alcohol, tobacco, any charges that a student is convicted of affects their good conduct. Also plagiarism, cheating affects that, and that does impact eligibility as well. Any questions about the eligibility changes? The overall hope is to give students an avenue to regain eligibility. It also encourages communication with students and staff. It forces the student to go talk to that teacher that they're failing and to ask, hey, what do I need to do to get my grade up? And if they follow through, then they get their eligibility back. So still accountability, but.
So essentially it'd be a week sooner than where you're at today, right?
Well, current policy is if you're on the list, you're ineligible for 2 weeks no matter what. If you remain ineligible, it's another 2 weeks, and then another 2 weeks. This incentivizes students, they could be theoretically 2 days later eligible if they get their grades up.
Okay.
So we did have a few instances this year. Test was put in the grade book after eligibility ran. Well, they were failing before the test, were ineligible. Test goes in the grade book on 2 days later. Now they're passing because they did well on the test. Well, is it fair or right to consequence that student for 2 weeks when they've already done the work to improve the grade? We also have working with NCC when they report grades isn't in line with when we do eligibility checks. So we had a few instances this year where NCC reported grades on a Tuesday, student had their grade up by a Thursday, we ran eligibility on Friday. Well, the grade we had was from Tuesday. So they became ineligible and had to sit for 2 weeks. With this, they could show that, hey, I am passing that class. Okay, submit the form, you'll regain your eligibility. So trying to not penalize students who have done the work and are eligible. And hoping that it's an incentive for students who, well, I'm out 2 weeks, there's only 4 weeks left in the season, I'm just gonna throw it in. We do have quite a bit of that as well. Students just kind of give up on the season because they don't want to do the work to get eligible. This, I'm hoping is another incentive of, if you do the work now, you could have 3 weeks left versus 2 or 1, so.
I think that's a good change.
But we'll see, how it goes, and hopefully it's positive for students. 34, 35, just a continuation of eligibility, and then 38, 39, plagiarism update. Mrs. Mans put together some of these guidelines for us, and just with a little bit of input from other teachers and file in the office myself, but Mrs. Mans did the majority of that. Major changes, just including some wording about AI, trying to make the policy more educational. The first offenses are more making the wrong right and redoing or resubmitting, where previously it was kind of up to staff if we jumped right to a good conduct violation, which is a pretty harsh penalty. So, and AI was used on several occasions this year by students to do papers and different things. So it is happening. That was it for high school changes. Those are ones of notes if you look through the changes are highlighted.
Questions to Mr. Hertz on the high school portion of that?
Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the handbooks for 24 and 25?
I'll make a motion to approve the 24, 25.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. We'll move on to consider approval of operational sharing agreements.
With the changes to the, like we've talked about the structure with the AEA, and not having that support, we felt it was important to be a part of that, as we've discussed kind of in length. So, and I won't read through that. Northwest AEA's board meeting was last week, I believe, and that's what I've attached. They've signed their end of things, I believe, and like I said, we're sharing Jordan with Northwest AEA. Central Lyon is also involved with this in Boyden Hall, and I think one of them had their board meeting last week and one was this week, if I remember right on that. So really for this to move forward, we just need to vote and have our approval.
Each of them have a fifth too?
Yes, they do. The only difference with that, Craig, would be technically Boyden Hall is a fifth. They share superintendent with West Sioux, so they might subcontract out some of his time at Boyden Hall with West Sioux, but we said what a school chooses to do, Casey's already listed some ways to use Jordan, and how a school uses him on that day is up to them. But just so if you hear later, well, why is West Sioux using him also? Well, they're splitting their own time with Boyden Hall. But that's a pretty easy connection because they're the same superintendent.
So we would have him approximately.
Correct. I don't know what day that is yet, but yes, we would have him 1 day a week.
Make a motion to approve work-based learning coordinator position.
In the last year, wasn't working, but she has previously also worked at the secondary level with work-based learning type experiences like at community colleges and things like that, working with high schoolers on placement. Would that be a fair way to say that, Mr. Hertz?
Yeah, lots of experience in counseling and great fit for us. Yeah.
I guess what I was saying is not all necessarily in the high school setting, but lots of experience in that realm.
Is there a motion? Please.
Make a motion to approve the new contracts for the state.
Okay, Second? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay, those are passed. Consider approval of district insurance policy.
I will ask Bill Pearson and Becky Block to come up if they're gonna do some presentation on this. Let's see what you think.
How are you? Good, you? I'm gonna try to talk real fast so the paper doesn't hear us.
Okay. Not in your way.
And this is too late. Just to introduce ourselves, Bill Pearson, Ms. Becky Block from Music Gate Pearson Agency will be handling the school's insurance this year. The renewals have come in and we've been watching it closely. Becky and I went down to Des Moines to EMC and visited with Jester Insurance. They're the ones that do the underwriting for the Iowa Association of School Boards. Known them people for a long time. The only things that's really been happening is the insurance industry itself is under a lot of stress, and the School Board Association program is no different. It looks to us like the premiums are up about 18%, less than I expected from last year. But you do now, the EMC has implemented a 1% deductible on all wind and hail losses. So we're talking basically about roofs. And you think, well, that's not so bad. Well, it's not real good because the 1% deductible on $35 million for the high school and middle school itself, that would be a $350,000 deductible. Not good. And what's transpired over the years is that roofs, and there just hasn't been upkeep on roofs like they should be. We're not blaming anybody, but how many, we talked about it earlier, how many people have you heard say, I'm gonna wait for hailstorm to replace the roof on my house? Everybody said that. And that's kind of caught up in the industry. It's turned into a huge problem. So last year, you guys purchased a deductible buy down to help lower that. We have an offer this year. It's more than expected. Were you gonna hand those out, Kendra?
Yeah, they have them.
Oh,
Well, you do have them, just to look at them. I'll make a great bedtime story for you tonight. It's quite expensive. Deductible buy down from that possible $350,000 claim here on the high school, middle school, or $115,000 for the Ben Franklin building. That'd be $115,000, 1% of that value. So anyway, we could lower that, we could buy down that deductible to $10,000, but that premium would cost approximately $49,000 actually. $49,500 for a year. You tell me what's gonna happen and I'll tell you what you're gonna need. I don't know what to tell you about that. That's a risk out there. We did include some other information in there from last year to show you what last year's premiums were based off of what it'll be this year. Just to kind of memory refreshed. The only other thing that we have as a suggestion, and I think you've got it in your notes, last year you went from, I believe it was a $3 million umbrella to a 5. This year, after talking with Janelle Friedman at Jester, she strongly suggested looking at the $10 million. Over the last 2 years, they've had two $8.5 million losses. Most of those losses are going to come from some form of an auto claim involving a bus. That's where most of that danger comes in at. I know we had a close call last year in the school, but how much is enough, I couldn't tell you. There are higher limits available, but it would cost about $8,000 for that $8,500 for your $5 million, and it would cost about $13,558 for $10 million. There's just a lot of what they call nuclear verdicts out there now in the court systems. And I wish that we could get that handled legislatively, but that hasn't happened yet. It's really raised havoc in the insurance industry.
So that you guys know, I think what you have,
The first page is the current, the 24-25 premium.
that would be this page.
Yep.
That's the premium for the coming year. The one that says risk RPS with the green on top, and then the one that says
Yeah.
Ryan Turner Specialty, it's kind of the RT. These are the two quotes for the deductible buy down that Bill was referencing.
With the RT on the top is a more expensive one, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, just as a comparison, so this risk placement services, the RPS, so, what that is, if you didn't catch that the first time, so for wind and hail, roof damage, we would have a claim, our deductible right now would be $350,000. This would be a buy down to lower that deductible if that event would happen down to 10,000. But the policy to do that is just under 50,000, 48 grand. So we're paying 48 grand to lower the deductible, just to explain that.
Yep.
And then this sheet is a great, I really appreciated when I saw that from Bill and, I keep wanting to say Tom and Becky. I gotta pause. Bill and Becky this morning, that just to kind of explain the differences of the cost of the umbrella policy. And so that you see what we have and what that cost would be for that $10 million umbrella policy, trying to make it as simplified as possible. And then there was a sheet, just so you know, I think it says, yeah, last year's numbers, the Sibley Ocheyedan Community School District kind of has the dates with the smaller printed font. That's for our policies and their prices and the total last year. So really, I mean, the new rates are what they are. We don't have a choice, we wanna do that. Definitely, I think we should do the umbrella at the $10 million level. And approve that. I think to keep the discussion moving here, what we have the discussion on is, do we wanna do that for the, hail and wind, the deductible buy down? Or do we want to do that, or not do that?
What did
Because yes,
that cost last year?
Last year,
It was about
It was a big jump.
$5,000.
yeah, it was only like 5 or 6 grand. It wasn't a lot, but the premiums this year, will give you an idea of the companies that were offering the deductible buy down did not do well last year. That's why the rates have jumped up tremendously. Ever since the insurance companies have moved to the percentage deductibles, that's where the deductible buy down insurance comes from. And, just so you know, property insurance, it's hit everybody. If you haven't noticed it on your, homeowner's policy, you will, it's coming. And the issues that we see, we don't see it stopping anytime soon.
See, when they lost the roof over the weekend.
They did, we looked that up, right, as of now, straight line wins, they think, right now?
Yeah, straight lines.
Portable, like,
Portable
Arthur.
High school.
Yeah, OABCIG, the alphabet school, but, yeah, their facility notable, part of the roof.
Over the gym.
Yes. Yeah, the deductible buy down's a good thing, but like I said,
Yes, we were talking.
Bill this morning too, I get that, but on the other hand, the policy, the premium's 48, so I'm gonna just round up to 50,000, right? Just, I'm not for or against what I'm saying, it's just to point it out, for 350,000 as of right now deductible, so I mean, in 7 years, you're even, paying what would have been the deductible anyway. It's a pretty quick horizon.
And the point is, what we're doing is, it's the board's decision, but we're just here to offer.
This is payable out of the management fund, right?
So the deductibles would be out of management, right?
The premium.
Or the premium, excuse me, thank you, sorry, the premium, I said that backwards. If we would have to pay the deductible, the 350, like if that would happen, worst case, that would come out of Save or Pep. Facilities. It all depends on timing, even with what we're discussing here, the revenue, bond situation. We probably could, depending on timing and what other projects for that, when it happens, what we've already approved and paid out, it might mean that we then would, for a year or two, have to delay some things. As an example, we pay for what we're gonna talk about later here, the computers out of Save and Pepple. So that could be a situation where, okay, now we have to delay that rotation for a year. You know, it just depends on when that happens and how much cash we have on hand. Right now, through Sandler, or Piper Sandler, excuse me, their lowest projection over the next few years, at their low point, we would have enough cash to pay the 350. We won't have anything after that, you know, at that point. That would continue to be built up, but we would at that point.
And just so you know, so like, if the Franklin school got hit, and that's 115 on Franklin and 350 here.
Yes, if it,
Yes.
Yeah.
both.
So they both
Yes.
facilities were hit.
I was aware, but I didn't
Yeah,
say that.
yeah.
Thank you for saying that, yes. So then you're at $500,000.
So if you're ready to make a motion.
Or ask a question, right?
Or ask a
Talk
question.
about management fund, or not, or do you-
Yeah, we can.
Discussion first.
And what Jamie was alluding to, yeah, we pay the premium for the insurance buy down out of management. And like we were talking, the one thing with management, I mean, we can do that. I always figure once you, kind of like insurance, once you add something or you do something, it's pretty easy for that to keep happening moving forward. And, you know, if we buy this next year, 3 years, and nothing happens, are we gonna not do that 3 years from now? I don't know. So, I mean, part of me thinks if we say this tonight, is that gonna be 50,000 each year and up? I don't know. I don't know.
It's, and I totally agree with what you're saying. It's nothing that you wanna jump in and jump out of. You either make the commitment to do that, or, because you'll get burnt trying to figure that out.
And that buy down covers both deductibles.
Yes.
Then there's money in the management fund to do this.
Yes. We were trying to make some projections with that, if we paid this all out, you know, kind of worst case over the next year and pay out some, potential liabilities and everything, it'd be pretty much a year from now, we about break even. We may overspend by $3,000 or something like that out of management, you know,
There's some-
in terms of worst case scenario, that was our guess.
Yeah, there's some unknowns in there.
Yeah, there's, correct.
Correct, thank you.
So we tried to look at it, yeah, from both perspectives. I should have said the management one earlier, I forgot, talking about Save Pepple, but both, you know, we're trying to look into next year. Could we do that in either scenario? And we could. It's not ideal, but we could.
And it's a tough decision. We understand it.
Yeah, just so you, I had the math, I wrote it down here. So yeah, just overall with the, outside of the umbrella and the, buying down that deductible, pretty much all the other insurance, if, you go from 271 to 317 or 318 rounding, so you got 29 and 18, 39, about 47,000 in increased cost there, which I'm not saying we exactly predicted, but we knew that would be up. Part of the reason we had to increase, the funding and the levy for the management fund this year is for this situation, rising insurance costs, right, among other things. So really, overall, we do a motion to approve that, but I think we would need a motion on whether we want separate to do the, if we would want to do the deductible buy down or not. And if we don't want to, then great, we won't do that. But that's the main thing we're deciding. Obviously, we have to have the general overall property insurance, and I can approve the excess. Yeah, the excess, thank you, liability here, the $10 million umbrella policy, if we would continue that. But I think our big discussion or decision process is whether we want to do that buy down process for the deductible. Any other questions with that, or thoughts or anything?
Do you see other like larger people that have policies like that do this buy down insurance?
It's a mixed bag, Jamie. Yeah, it really is. But there's really no pattern. Come to mind, I'm just throwing this out. I mean, like the schools that get some of the casino money, are they in better shape? I'm assuming they are. That might make a difference, but I'm just trying to think of, this budget's so tight, we know that.
Do you have any other questions for me or anything with this? Or thoughts that I can help with?
I guess what are your thoughts, Dan?
I've kind of wavered. I had one thought, went the other way, and went back again. I guess part of me is I think the buying down a deductible at 1/7 of the cost is, in my mind, a pretty steep price. I know there's risk. I do get that. We don't want to jeopardize. Bill asked me the question, or I'll let you phrase it. Why don't you ask me that question again? And I was thinking about the answer.
If that happens, how are you going to explain this to the public? And the reason that I'm saying it that way is because everybody uses hindsight on any type of board that you're on. You're making an informed decision, and you make it at the best of your ability. And then there's always someone that's going to use hindsight. So, do you want your name in the paper? No, it's just that's just one of the perils of being on a board when you're trying to make informed decisions and do what you feel is best at the time. I completely understand what Superintendent Rizzo was saying, but we're here to offer the coverage. Yeah.
And I guess so that's where I'm kind of leaning at, even if that would happen, and ask, why do you do that? And say, well, we thought that would be best for our district and our taxpayers. So I would lead, I'm of the opinion of not purchasing that at this time. And I know that's a risk, but I mean, we have all our other coverages in place. The risk is whether it happens to pay for that deductible. It's not the risk of not getting insurance, right? Obviously, we're going to still have that. We'll have the umbrella policy, but I understand if you want to go that way, but that would be my recommendation at this time. And if we go the other way, it's great, but if someone asked that later, why didn't we buy that? I would be comfortable answering why we didn't.
Yep.
We thought that would be best for our district and the taxpayers at the time, because the insurance buy down was expensive.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I mean, cause that's gonna come, you know, if it happens.
Do we need two motions?
No,
Or can we do it all in
we
one?
can just approve the policy and the $10 million.
Yes,
Okay.
the motion for just the policy and the umbrella policy.
Then the umbrella policy all together in one motion. Okay. No, in the motion? Since it was presented?
Since it was presented, you're probably right, just so that it's clear, if
But I
we're looking back, that we didn't do the deductible.
I think you
Buy down.
can put it all in one.
Put it all in one motion.
To approve the policy, the $10 million excess liability, and not to have the buy down, if that's what we're doing.
Yeah, basically improve the updated insurance policy as presented to include the 10 million umbrella policy, if you're going this way, and then not to purchase the deductible buy down.
Okay, is somebody ready?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the one for $317,000 policy and the additional 10 million liability, and not include the deductible buy down insurance.
Okay, is there a second? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that was passed. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Appreciate the time you put
Yep,
into this.
no problem. Our door is open, anybody has questions anytime, just reach out to us.
Okay,
And Kendra, we got a file of insurance cards for you.
great.
Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
We have 2 minutes. Okay, moving on to the resolution supporting the proposed issuance of the revenue bonds.
I have that as attachment. Whoever makes the motion needs to read a portion of it. I did print it out and I highlighted the portion in orange that needs to be read. That might be easier than reading it off your screen or the TV monitor. Not suggesting who, but it would have to be someone other than Laurel. That's all I'll say with that. So if anyone's agreeable to make that motion, I do have that here if they want to read it and what needs to be read.
No, I remember last month,
Yes, you did.
You did so well. I could- Wait, maybe I should look at it first.
It's the whole thing.
not too bad.
Do I read the,
Yeah, where it starts in orange. Right.
just start here?
Yep, yep.
Whereas this, do I just say I'll make a motion to,
Yes.
okay, I'll make a motion to approve
Resolution.
the resolution supporting the proposed insurance of approximately 6.5 million school infrastructure sales service and use tax revenue bonds, whereas the school district receives revenue from the state of Iowa Secure and Advanced Vision for Education Fund pursuant to Iowa Code Section 423F.2, and whereas pursuant to Iowa Code 423F and an election duly held in accordance therewith on November 2, 2021, approving a revenue support statement, the Board of Directors is currently entitled to spend saved revenue for school infrastructure purposes, and whereas the Board of Directors is in need of funds for the following school infrastructure projects: installing a geothermal system and other HVAC improvements at the elementary school building, repairing and replacing portions of the roof, and installing a voice-activated fire alarm system at the middle high school building, and constructing secure entrances at all school buildings, including cost of issuance and a debt service reserve fund if required by purchaser, and whereas the Board of Directors has deemed it necessary and advisable that the district issues school infrastructure sales, service, and use tax revenue bonds which may be issued in one or more series over multiple fiscal years pursuant to Iowa Code Section 423F.2 and 423F.4, in the approximate amount of $6.5 million for the purpose of providing funds for installing a geothermal system and other HVAC improvements at the elementary school building, repairing and replacing portions of the roof, and installing a voice-activated fire alarm system at the middle high school building, and constructing secure entrances at all school buildings, including cost of issuance and debt service reserve fund if required by the purchaser. Any bond proceeds remaining after completion of this project will be used for other school infrastructure projects as authorized by the school district's revenue purpose statement, and whereas the board of directors has compiled with the provisions of Iowa Code Section 423F.4 by providing notice and holding a public hearing on a proposal to issue such bonds. Now therefore it is resolved that the board of directors supports the proposal to issue approximately $6.5 million school infrastructure sales, service, and use tax revenue bonds, which may be issued in one or more series over multiple fiscal years pursuant to Iowa Code Sections 423F.2 and 423F.4 for the purpose of providing funds for installing a geothermal system and other HVAC improvements at the elementary school building, repairing and replacing portions of the roof, and installing a voice-activated fire alarm system at the middle and high school building, and constructing secure entrances at all school buildings, including costs of issuance and the debt service reserve fund if required by the purchaser. Any bond proceeds remaining after the completion of the project will be used for other school infrastructure projects as authorized by the school district's revenue purpose statement. Eligible electors of the school district have the right to file with the board secretary a petition pursuant to Iowa Code Section 423F.4 to be on or before close of business on July 1, 2024 for an election in the proposed bond issuance. The petition must be signed by eligible electors equal in number to not less than 100 or 30% of those voting at least at the last preceding election of school officials under Iowa Code Section 277.1, whichever is greater. In the event a petition containing the required number of ballot signatures is filed with the secretary of the board on or before close of business on July 1, 2024, the president shall call a meeting of the board to consider withdrawal the proposed bond issuance or directing that the question of the proposed bond issuance be submitted to the qualified electors of the school district. If the board determines to submit the question to the electors, the proposition to be submitted shall be as follows. Shall the board of directors of the Southern Ocheyedan Community School District in the County of Osceola, State of Iowa be authorized to issue approximately $6.5 million school infrastructure, sales, service, and use tax revenue bonds, which may be issued in one or more series over multiple fiscal years pursuant to Iowa Code Section 423F.2 and 423F.4, and the approximate amount of $6.5 million for the purpose of providing funds for installing a geothermal system and other HVAC improvements at the elementary school building, repairing and replacing portions of the roof, and installing a voice-activated fire alarm system at the high school, middle school building, and constructing secure entrances at all school buildings, including cost and issuance and a debt service all school buildings, including cost and issuance and a debt service reserve fund.
Opposed? That is passed. Consider approval of affirmative action plan.
So this is supposed to be done every 2 years, and when I was looking into this, it's supposed to be, and it's scheduled to be done in the odd years. And so this is an even year, right, 2024. So this should have been approved last year, and looking back, it was not. Some things had been updated, but not everything, but it should have been approved, but it wasn't presented. And so I made some updates to that plan, and I'm presenting that for approval. I just tried to make the basic updates with some position changes and some other things with the stats, and then I recommend we approve that, but continue it in the cycle, so then we would update it again next year, and then stay on cycle that it's approved in the odd years.
Make a motion to approve affirmative action plan.
Is there a second? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. This passed. Consider approval of adult lunch prices for 24-25 school year.
Unlike the other places, we don't get full control over the adult lunch prices. They recommend leaving them, though, as they were last year. It's $4.84, and just for simplicity of change, when people pay with cash, we had it at $4.85, and we're allowed to continue that for next year.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, second. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is passed. Consider approval of student breakfast and lunch prices.
These are what the prices are currently at. We're not proposing any changes. I think right now our nutrition fund is doing well. That is something I think next year we might look at, even if it's minimally, because what we want to, or at least I want to avoid happening, is all of a sudden we've kept it the same 4, 5, 6 years in a row, and then all of a sudden we have to do that big increase for whatever reason, and to do that in 1 year. So, but right now I don't see a reason, but I would anticipate next year we might do a slight increase just for that very reason, because it's been at the same point for a few years now.
Is there a motion? Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that is passed. Consider purchase of new kitchen shelving.
You can see the bids there in the bid matrix, and the ones from Martin Brothers is the one that would be the lowest, and that is preferred. Some of this is to update it. Some of it in our coolers, technically, in a few of our walk-ins, aren't to code. They were not of the right weight or support or off the ground. I mean, we were allowed to continue, but asked to update that when we could. So this would address that, and then all the other shelving issues.
And is this payable out of the nutrition?
This would be paid out of the nutrition fund, yes.
Make a motion to approve purchase of kitchen shelving for Martin Brothers.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And that is passed. Consider approval of resolution to transfer funds from general fund to activity fund for safety equipment.
So as it explained, the legislature allowed a few years ago that things that are required as protective equipment, you can reimburse your activity fund, which is always low on dollars from the general fund. This is another fun one. You got to read the resolution, but it is far smaller. It's just right there where you have to read. And then on the recommendation, it is in the resolution, the dollar amount to the penny.
Whereas Iowa Code provides school districts greater flexibility to transfer access funds to other specified purposes, whereas the board, in consultation with its community, has determined the funds of $15,229.86 in the general fund shall be transferred to the student activity fund to purchase protective and safety equipment required for any extracurricular interscholastic athletic contest or competition that is sponsored or administered by the organization as currently defined by Iowa Code.
Is there a second? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is passed. Consider approval of 24-25 teacher work rules,
So
et cetera.
oh, I'm sorry.
Et cetera.
Et cetera, yes. So there's 6 of them last year. I think they were presented in the summer, and then looking through, not all of our work rules and handbooks were approved initially in the summer, and we did some of that during the school year, so I'm hoping this should cover everything, so we don't have to say, oh, yeah, we forgot this till in September or July or whenever. A lot of them were clerical. I tried to point out any of the major changes, and I can bring any up if you want to, but I'll just kind of summarize and highlight them here. Teacher work rules, the biggest things was, we've had situations where veterans come here and it says their new employees for their first 2 years have 3 evaluations both years. This was a change I recommended, having been principal, but we've had situations where people come in with 10, 15, 20 years experience, and you can figure out in their first year if they know what's going on or not. So their second year, I think it's okay to go with 1 observation. In those situations, we wouldn't do that with a new or young teacher. We're just talking to veterans there. That's the only major change in the teacher work rules. The business procedure handbook had a lot of discussion on this, but increasing the meal allotment for employees to $40 per day. It was at 25, wasn't it? Yeah. I think, with food prices, even if you have continental breakfast, that can be a challenge. The faculty handbook, in many places our handbook said if people wanted to see the board policies, they could go to their building office and get a copy of that. We don't have binders with the printed out board policies anymore. They can go on the website or on Assembly to see that, so that's why that's changed, and just clarifying that. And then I'm just changing words to secretaries will usually know where the principal is at. It had been wording, well, always. Well, that's not always a possible task. If the principal is scheduled to do an observation in room A and down the hall situations arise and they go there, the secretary won't necessarily know that, and I'm not expecting them to say, before I break up this fight, I'm gonna go back to the office and let the secretary know where I'm at, right? So that's why I usually know where they're at. And then page 15, just clarifying the wording about practice and event cancellation is determined by the superintendent. And then the handbook for the support staff, very similar clarification of what I just explained. And things that are in practice that weren't worded. There's nothing in this special education associate handbook. And then in the coaches director's handbook, page 7, rewording for times and procedures for the junior high activity shuttle, just matching up to make it more sense with what we're doing with that. That doesn't change what's offered. It will be continuing to be offered, but just wording it because it hadn't been updated. And then changing the wording on policies for transportation for extra curricular events to match board policy. I think we had updated a few things in board policy, but not necessarily that handbook to match it.
Is there a motion?
I got a question on this junior high shuttle that has been brought up to my attention once before, but let's say if the practice isn't over at 5, and they don't, this thing leaves at 5:15 no matter what, or?
It has in the past for the junior high that they've tried to communicate that. If they know that they're gonna be practice past that point, I guess they're supposed to communicate that with the activities director and Amos ahead of time, not just the day of and go, oops, we went late. That's been more the issue. If you know that ahead of time, make arrangements so they can plan on that.
So it can't run past 5 is what you're talking about?
Not consistently, but if there's a day that it has, right, then for X reason, whatever that may be.
The coach really needs to communicate that with the transportation
Correct.
director.
And not consistently, we're trying to do that just for times and consistent with other sports, but there's situations where you might need to know, hey, this is gonna go late on this day because of fill in the blank, I don't know what that reason would be.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the changes to the teacher work rules, business procedures handbook, faculty handbook, support staff handbook, special education associate handbook, and the coaches director's handbook.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is passed. Consider approval of iReady purchase.
Okay, some of these are on here, and then I'm gonna address this in a few items of why we're changing policy here, but the main reason I'm presenting this is over that $10,000 superintendent spending authority here, and so this is for iReady. You heard Kent, Mr. DeZayo, Kent talk about that. That's our second math assessment that we use, and it supports that. This is I will say this is a curriculum review year for math, so this might be something we switch from to something else, but for this coming year, we would continue to use it. But the quote is for $12,682.50.
Make a motion to approve the purchase by Reddy.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is passed. Consider approval of Lexia purchase.
Alexia is used as one of the tools for our ELA curriculum, not D1, but it's one of those supportive tools that we use. They're backing off its use in the middle school, so in the past we've had 2 licenses, but we're just getting a certain number of licenses in the middle school because they use that as an additional support in our SPED program in the middle school, but it is extensively used at the elementary. So it's $13,800 for the renewal at the elementary and then $990 for the necessary licenses for the middle school.
This is just a yearly, annual.
Correct. Yes.
Motion to approve the purchase of the Lexi for 24-25 year of $14,790.
Is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that is passed. Consider approval of payments to SiteLogic.
Okay, so we've obviously approved moving ahead with that project. So we've had some meetings, I think I updated you on one, with SiteLogic and had some of their boots on the ground guys, for lack of a better word, to see the spaces. So we read the resolution earlier to get the funding for this project. But obviously, SiteLogic is asking for some payments. So how this works, Kendricks, correct me if I say anything or if I skip over anything here. But their professional services and their professional design agreement, I believe, are the name of the 2, right? But this is their overall initial invoices. And what they're asking us is to pay, when we get an invoice like this for the month, to pay kind of roughly a percentage or a breakdown of that 10 to 25%. And then that would be taken off of the end, but that we're paying a portion of that. So we're not literally going to pay $140,000 for this invoice here for the professional services agreement, or $88,000 on this one. We'd be paying, based on what we have in our funding and save in PEPL, Kendra and I would make the determination to pay a percentage somewhere in that neighborhood of 10 to 20 or 25%. And then when by approving this invoice, we pay a portion of it a year from now when the full bill is due and we're.
When we receive the funds.
Yeah, we
from the
receive the
bond.
funds, then that's how we pay off the rest.
So this is kind of like a down payment then,
Yeah, and this will be monthly, probably over the next year.
That one there is $355,250, and so they're saying to pay 25% of it, but you're only gonna pay 10% of it?
No,
Or that's right.
that's 25% of the project is complete.
Oh, okay. I understand.
This is the amount they're billing this month to us and asking to pay what we can of it, 10 to 25%. We said we would try to pay the 25% unless we get tight funds, and we pay for lots of things, projects.
I don't care.
They understand that we're not gonna get the funding from the bond
Yeah.
for a year
Sure.
probably, so
Did I leave anything out? I think I covered it mainly,
I
right?
think so.
But we'll start paying for some of like this roof stuff that's going on right now, correct?
That will be paid out of Save and PEPL, yes, separate from the
Yeah,
site, because they're not under, the work we're doing now isn't necessarily under the authority of SiteLogic, right? It's separate, so we will pay that, correct? We will.
The guys coming in seem to be good? Site guy?
With site, yes, we had, trying to go around the table, 8 people with their team, and some of them they subcontract with, and so necessarily haven't met us before or with Jeff, so Jeff was here, kind of coordinated that Herzberger. And then, like some of them, they hear about the changes and we're doing a secure entrance, but haven't been here, so then we did a tour and physically went over to the elementary and then, you know, showed them the office space, showed them the entrance, and, you know, those that are in that, they're like, oh, okay, you know, they're looking right away to see everything, and then kind of, yeah, the basic presentation was there, but asking for anything that we noticed or talk about our needs, and gives them kind of an idea to make more specific, like architectural or engineering plans, you know. I'll give you an example, like we talked about that classroom being converted to office space, but we talked about a need for a bathroom in there because of the nurse's office, and we have one nurse for the district. So if Ashley Hench is over at the middle school or the high school, not at the elementary, when kids come to the office sick, it's generally the secretary that deals with it, and she can't be in two places at once. So talking through things like that, seeing if that's feasible to add that in there, but that's kind of where we're at right now.
Any more questions? Okay. Can I ask for a motion?
Do we need to say a certain amount?
No, I think you can just approve
And
the
then
way
we'll-
they explained it. If we approve the full payment, which we're not going to pay the full amount, then later we don't have to reapprove everything when we actually pay the whole thing.
Sure.
So they know we're only gonna pay a portion of it, but no, I think you can just make a motion to approve the payments.
Site logic as presented, yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the paying of the initial payments to Site Logic for services in our elementary, middle school, high school facility improvement project.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That is passed. Consider approval of purchase high school student Chromebooks.
Before I start, I'm gonna thank Mr. Beavers for this. He always does a lot of work, but he put a lot of work into this one. In kind of researching the options and so forth. I think it ended up to be, was it 7 or 9 different kind of computer options, not all necessarily different companies, but options and going through what the pluses and minuses and yeah, what would be best for us. So I apologize, the one attachment here, but this is kind of what his summary was, this sheet, but to get it all on here, it's the only way I could do that. But the one that I highlighted in blue is the one he recommended. It's not the cheapest one if you read through, but there's reasonings for that, and I think he made that pretty clear. But picking the most affordable one, there was another one that was cheaper, but their support for that particular machine was going to end at the end of this year, and we're hoping to use this, you know, 2, 3, 4 years. So having support in for a machine is not a great thing. This was kind of spelling them out, but he put that on that Excel sheet that I made as a PDF to kind of to sum that up, but these are the ones where they specifically came from. So the quote would be for, and what the one he's requesting would be for the purchase of the Chromebooks, the series Dell 3120 Chromebooks, the computer cases with them, and the computer licenses. And I won't read that all, but hopefully you were able to see or can read that now, his description. I think he gave a pretty good description on why he came to that.
Questions? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve the purchases of the high school student Chromebooks for the amount of $120,158.80.
Is there a second? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That was passed. Consider changes to policy 70501.
So this is our current policy, and I intentionally didn't bring this up to the policy committee because there wouldn't have been anything to present because we needed to have this discussion here. So all we're doing is really focusing on this middle part where the dots are. Okay? For goods and services, and I'll just kind of summarize, but it says the superintendent will have the authority to authorize purchases without prior board approval for up to $10,000. Goods and services between 10 and 25 shall receive at least a quote or a bid. It could be verbal or written. I present that, and then anything over 25 is supposed to go through the competitive bid process. These numbers were put into place, I don't know what year, but a long time ago. And I think the intent for what they served with the increase in prices has since passed. I'll give you an example too, the things tonight, like approving iReady and Lexia. Generally, that's something you've hired me and the principals to do, right? They make the choice and we do that. But with this not adjusting and the cost of those things, now that's over the bid price, so we presented them, where normally that wouldn't be. There's also been things this year because of timing, that were over $10,000 that we approved, but because of timing, we didn't have a choice. And I'll give you an example of something recently, the bid to service and update our basketball hoops. So they have to be serviced, and then getting the hoists looked at just in the high school gym and replace the straps because we had them out of compliance. It came to about 18 grand. And you're like, well, why didn't I present that? Well, when they got the bid, we could have them come like the next week, and then that would be done before the floor is refinished. If we didn't have them come then, I didn't know if we'd have, based on their schedule, we wouldn't have them here before school started. You know what I mean? So you get some of those issues there. So I did print out, because this has been a discussion with some other schools, not this specifically, but just talking this through. I didn't print out copies for everyone, but I'll pass these around. I didn't get every school in the area, but what I tried to look at is schools that were on Assembly, because I can go there pretty quickly, that have this same policy, and I highlighted the school and their dollar amounts. And then I tried to for sure get the policy of schools that are bordering us, because not all of them are on Assembly. So I have HLP in here, Sheldon, George Little Rock, and Boyden Hall are all in here. But you can kind of see some of the schools have adjusted this. Some of the schools you'll see there isn't any different. It's because they haven't yet addressed this. I've also had some principals say superintendents say we need to look at that because we're not abiding by it right now. Because when you look for the sealed bid process at 25 grand, we're not doing that either, right? And I think that used to be. So I'll pass these around if you want to look to, just some examples. Sioux Center has I'm just saying the lower dollar amount at 25, upper at 100. West Lyons lower 25, upper at 50, but I know they've talked about changing that. Sioux Center's lower amount is 25, the upper end is 250,000. Rock Valley's, the lower end is 25, the upper is 75. Sheldon has the lower end at 30 and the upper end at 130,000. So as you can see, they're kind of all over those that have adjusted it. HMS put their lower end at 25, the upper end at 75. West Sioux has their lower end at 50, the upper end at 300,000. Boyden Hall basically has the same numbers we do. And I pointed out Boyden Hall and West Sioux's because I've had conversations, they have the same superintendent, and one board they've updated the policy in these other cities. Previously, I didn't ask him specifically, but he said it's something we need to address and look at because it's not realistic. Central Lyons, the lower end is at 10, but their upper end is at 196. So these are ones that didn't adjust or haven't done much with it. George Little Rock, the lower end is at 10, and the upper end is the same as ours. Okoboji, lower end is at 10, upper end is at 48, so pretty much just like ours. They just probably haven't updated that. And then Harris Lake Park is exactly like ours reads. So if you want to take a look to verify, they're right here. But I just did that to present you a smattering, a little bit of schools in the area, and you can see some have addressed and updated that, and some have not. But I think it'd be good to address now because I want to attempt to always follow policy, but some of the times just with the change in prices, that's not easy. And like I said, there's been other examples, but just recently with the basketball thing, it's not like I didn't want to, but we needed to have the hoops serviced, the safety straps were not working. We needed to have that done before the next school year started, right? You know what I mean? So, you know, and approving Lexi tonight, that's great, but I don't think when this was put in place, when we were buying things like iReady and Lexia, they didn't cost over $10,000. They were probably at the 4 or 5 mark, right? So, questions or comments that you have about this?
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Yep.
I agree.
And I get it's a trust thing, and that doesn't mean some of the times with some things when they come in that if we get whatever we change it to, but get a higher dollar bid, that I still might present something to you even though I don't have to. But, you know, a timing thing, but it does give us flexibility if we raise the amounts. I mean, I don't see any need why we have to keep presenting the math curriculum for purchase each year, right? You know, that's what, you know, Kent talked about their group that's gonna meet to discuss this, and then they make a recommendation, and we decide to purchase this, that's what they're hired to do, so.
So you're just asking us to set an amount then? or-
Set an amount.
Yep, and then what we would do, that would be in the minutes. I would make a draft and update this policy with that, and then we would have the second reading next month where that change is in there, and then approve that next month in July. If that makes sense. You can set an amount if you wanna ask for a recommendation. I could kinda give you one. Kendra and I have talked through this a little bit, but, however you wanna proceed is fine. Or if you have other questions.
What is your recommendation?
I would say the lower limit, you know, I say there's 3 dots, but the middle dot is really everything that falls between the lower and the upper limit, right? I'd say the lower one, you'd want it at least 25, excuse me. You can see a lot are in there, but there's some that are at 30 or higher. We'd want that at least 25 to that 50 range. The upper limit, as we were talking through things, I think we would want, I'm gonna recommend at least 150, but I'm gonna say 200,000. As an example, the computers we bought tonight, for the total, I should have this memorized, but I don't. 120, was it? Okay. If we don't set that high enough, for example, Tony's gone through the work to get all those bids, but technically following policy, if they were above they were above the limit that it should have been sealed bids, right? Now, I think when that was set, that wasn't the idea with those type of things, more of your big projects and constructions, but this prices have changed over time, that trying to match up what the intent and where we need those things to happen. So I would recommend the upper limit at 200. Obviously, things below that doesn't mean I'm still not presenting you with a quote or a bid for it.
Yeah, just the first section is what you can approve without having board approval.
Right.
That's the superintendent can approve. The middle one is you get bids and the board approves them. It's just not the formal bid process. We rarely do the upper one where we're getting the formal RFP process, and that we have sealed bids. We rarely do that, and that's what you're supposed to be doing for the 25,000.
So you're saying you just can't go spend 200,000?
You still have to approve them.
Yes,
I
yes.
think that's good, I mean, it's.
Anything. For that, and I can say, go ahead and get that, because that's within the superintendent's spending authority.
Okay. Anybody have an idea on what they want to present for those numbers that go along with Superintendent Zeo's recommendation, or? I personally, I think those are good numbers to go with.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to change policy 70501 of the purchasing and bidding to the superintendent, spending threshold to 25,000 and to 200,000 on the
Goods and services.
goods and services.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
I,
Opposed? Okay, that's passed. Consider changes to policy 71103.
So this is just kind of wording and updating things, and I'll explain why I didn't present this, but to update it. So it had originally just said parents signing their students out, not changing, we'd still expect that, but there's situations where the student doesn't have a parent that's in charge of them. We've had situations where it's grandparents or other guardian, right? Well, technically, the way it was worded, that's not supposed to happen even though they're the guardian. So it's just updating that and then just reinforcing what we already do. If it's an event that they have ridden or school provided transportation to, in order to not take that home, the parent / grandparent / guardian must check in with the sponsor to sign that student out.
I'll make a motion to approve the changes to policy 71103. To skip the second reading of these changes.
Is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That was passed. Consider approval of public records custodians.
So we have to approve this annually, and currently it's Kinder Reiter and myself. And then the recommendation is to approve that the school business official and superintendent continue to serve as the custodians of the public records, and it should include the positions without the actual names, so that it's about those that are filling that who you've already appointed.
Make a motion to, motion to approve the recommendation that the school board, business official, and superintendent continue to serve as the custodians of public records.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And move the motion to go into a closed session, or do we just move it?
We need to have a motion.
Okay, so we need a motion to
And just read all this.
Oh.
And we have to turn this off. We're done. Well,